Senator O'Neill.
Thank you very much, Acting Deputy President. And I rise as a proud woman of the New South Wales Right to mark the passing of a great man of the New South Wales Right of the Great Australian Labor Party. He will be sadly missed. He was an enormous man in our history and in esteem, as we just heard from Senator Moore, that spread right out into the community because of his authenticity and the authentic work that he did for all the communities that he belonged to. The community of the Labor Party as a political party, the community of the Transport Workers Union as a powerful advocate for social justice for Australians, and then as a powerful speaker and a man of great heart for the legislative journey of this place to try and make change, to genuinely improve the lives of Australian people. I also want to indicate, as Senator Cameron did, that circumstances here in the Senate prevented many of us attending Steve's Mass yesterday. I think it was at St Finbarr's, was that the church in the Blue Mountains? And I'm very pleased that I feel we were all represented with vim and vigour and with sadness and remembrance by the senators who were able to attend, Senator Farrell, Senator Dastyari, and particularly Senator Gallagher and Stirl, for you shared two of those communities with him in a very significant way. As others have indicated, he was a man who loved his family, and as Senator Moore has said, there was a joy in Steve. That was a natural part of his nature, but it's in his reflections on his family, his connections with his family, that we saw him at his best. And I did not have the privilege of working with Senator Hutchins here in this chamber, but I did, at the time of his valedictory speech, come over and sit with many of our colleagues from the House of Representatives to honour his moving from this place and into a more connected life with his family. And that is what he said to me as I spoke to him on that evening, that was the joy of the moment for him. And I think we can all recall the beautiful speech that he gave at his valedictory and how much he did recall the great work that he'd done and the generosity that he showed in thanking so many people who made his work possible. I was not involved with him in the work that he did on committees, which I think has been beautifully described this evening by Senator Moore. But Steve's words in his valedictory speech, I think, were really very significant in giving the flavour of the level of engagement that he had with the work that he did. And I really wanted to just read in for the record once more his comments on the inquiry into the Forgotten Australians, and this is what he said. It was very sad and painful inquiry. There were hundreds of written submissions, if you could call some of them written. There were many phone calls, mostly to the dedicated secretariat led by the avuncular Elton Humphrey, who I hope is here today. Then he interrupts and he says, there he is, along with Christine MacDonald and Ingrid Zappi. I read each and every one of these submissions, and I often cried at what was in them. They were all sad. They were from men and women, mostly in their 70s and 80s, attempting to provide us with an understanding of what for most of them was the nightmare they enjoyed as young boys and girls. Even now, I think of them and their written words and their courage in coming forward to tell us what happened to them, the abandonment, the fear, the shame, the self-harm, the loneliness, problems that exist to this day, and not least of all, the suicides that resulted. These people's stories are etched in my memory, the most reprehensible experiences and impossible to forget. We were all shaken to the base of our souls. Our hearts sighed. Steve Hutchins was a warrior for the rights of ordinary, hard-working Australians at every turn and in every context. But he was a man who, in his closing words, said, our hearts sighed. A special man. May he rest in peace.
Thank you, Senator O'Neill. Senator Williams.
Thank you, Madam Deputy President. I'd like to say a few words in respect to Steve Hutchins, former senator. How could you sum up Hutcho? Just a fair dinkum good bloke. I enjoyed working with him and saddened when I was talking to Piers Ackerman last Thursday who told me that Steve was very ill, and Friday morning I got the text from former Labor Senator Ursula Stevens, another fine lady I've had the privilege to meet in this place. But you remember the funny things and about where you're sitting over there, Senator Sterle, Julian McGoran was making a speech one day, and of course Senator McGoran took every interjection going, and Senator Hutchins was over here and he gave some interjection, and Senator McGoran said, well, if Senator Hutchinson would be quiet over there, and Hutcho said, the name's Hutchins. And McGoran replied, well, if you ever came in here and made a speech, we might get to know your name, at which Hutcho really returned fire at Senator McGoran, and I had to laugh, but it was all in good humour. I stayed in touch with Hutcho often after he'd left this place. When we had the kerfuffle of the Road Safety Remuneration Tribunal last year, the first thing I did, Sterlo, was ring Hutcho and say, mate, we've got a problem. Small business are going to suffer. And he said, I'll do what I can. And typically he did what he could do. And he was just an enjoyable fella, loved working with him. He will be sadly missed by many, but to Natalie and his family, my sincere condolences. And Hutcho, you suffered a long illness. We will remember you, and thank you for your great contribution to this country.
Senator Sterle.
Thank you, Madam Deputy President. Look, I'd just like to add a few words about our mate Hutcho. Not Hutcho, the former senator, but Hutcho, the lion of the TWU and the union movement. And my association with Hutcho goes back to the 90s when I was a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, know-everything young truckie with a potty mouth who thought I could sort every problem out in the world once. Well, I'm not. Well, I'll take the ingestion. Things have changed. I'm not young anymore. And I thought I could solve the problems of the world from a truckie's perspective. And I had a great distaste for people that never came through our side, Senator Gallagher and I, as ex-transport workers, truckies or baggage handlers, because I just didn't think that they could be really tuned in with truckies and transport workers. How wrong I was of Hutcho. Hutcho was a man that no one's going to fill those shoes. No one can fill those shoes of Hutcho. And I just want to put a little bit of frivolity into it. In the good old days in the Transport Workers Union when Ivan Hodgson ruled with an iron fist, and I mean an iron fist, and the transport industry was a tough industry, let me tell you, and there was no place for wimps or anyone to take a backward step. And it was installed in us, you can lose a fight, but if you don't have one, look out, because you'll get one when you get back to the TWU family. But the rules were set out. You couldn't become a TWU organiser or an official until you'd spent at least 12 months in the industry. Hutcho worked his way around those rules, but he went off, as we know, as a forklift driver. And as Senator Brandis said, Hutcho did some time as a garbo. What Senator Brandis didn't say is Hutcho fell off the back of the bloody truck the first couple of days in the job and then was on compo for months with a broken arm. But Hutcho got round the rules. Anyway, and what a dynamo that man was for our movement, for our union. And I just want to say a few other things. That Hutcho was a few things that I wasn't. One is he was a state secretary. I never rose to the dizzy heights of a state secretary. I was always the baggy pants organiser in the yards at 5 in the morning getting told what to do by the state secretary, which I enjoyed immensely. Hutcho was our federal president, as was Senator Gallagher. Twice, I think, Senator Gallagher, weren't you, mate? I was never a federal president. And Hutcho was a fair dinkum social conservative, which I'm not, and never will be. And I remember one day getting a phone call. We were having a debate in this building at the time, and I think it might have been over the RU 486 debate, which was very topical at the time. And there were some very firm views how that and who should implement who should get the RU 486. And Hutcho rang me and said, Sterling, we're going for a walk tomorrow morning. And I thought, oh, Hutcho never walked, let alone got up in the morning. So I thought, oh God, I'm going to cop the New South Wales right. The blue ear, the staunch Catholic argument. We walked around the block, but at the end of the day, Hutcho, could sum up one thing about Hutcho, was loyalty. You could have a difference of opinion with Hutcho, and he would argue to the nth. And he had a brilliant ability to put the argument forth. He couldn't win me on the RU 486, and I voted with the social democratic view that a woman should have full control on what she wants to put in her body and take whatever. And I went with the other side as Hutcho. Well, I meant the pill thing, you know. Anyway, much to Hutcho's disgust, but at the end of the day, we were still union comrades. He was still my mate. He's my mate to this very day, and he always will be. But I just want to also share another couple of things to Natalie and the family. Deepest condolences, and it was a huge turnout yesterday, 500 odd people, I'm led to believe. It was packed chock-a-block. But to the TWU family, Richie Olsen, New South Wales State Secretary, and we're all part of Hutcho, and we've all come through the Hutcho School of TWU and unionism, and to his officials and his branch committee of management and staff and members. A very, very sad loss. To the TWU National Office, Tony Sheldon and Michael Kane, and once again, Tony is a product of Hutcho and his great leadership. And to the whole TWU family, we're going to miss you, mate, we really are. But on a couple of light notes to see Hutcho off, and Senator Gallagher and I and Fiona, we had a couple of bevies for him last night, and we could feel him in the room. We couldn't join the procession at the Lapo. We had to get back to Canberra. We were driving, but we certainly had a few, didn't we, mate? I think you're still crook, aren't you? You're still looking a bit. I've recovered all right, but Hutcho would never have had it anyway. But a couple of light things just quickly. I remember sitting in, as we did in the good old days when the old right was as close as anything, and we were a close family, the right, there's no doubt about that, under Hutcho's leadership and others, and Hoggy. And we're sitting there through one of these mind-numbingly boring nights where there's just these 20-minute debates going on about a bill that really didn't matter, but someone wanted to filibuster to keep it going because they needed some crossbench numbers or some damn thing. And after a bottle of white, Hutcho got up and said, well, I might go do 20 minutes. And he said, watch this. He walked into the chamber, and I think it was one of those boring, it might have been a taxation bill or something, I don't know what it was. Hutcho said, I want to talk about this taxation bill, then spent the other 19 minutes and 50 seconds talking about the Battle of Waterloo and Nelson. and no one challenged him. And he came back, sat down and drank another bottle of wine. Anyway, but that was Hutcho. There's also another one I just want to share. I wasn't here in the chamber when Hutcho first got his illness, but by crikey, I was at the receiving end when Hutcho fought it off. And what I mean by the receiving end, and Senator Gallagher can remember this vividly, we were at a TWU National Council in Melbourne, I think it was, and Hutcho had been cleared, and Hutcho was on the way back. And we ended up, as you do, the truckies, we like a beer, you know, and beer or 15 or whatever, and somehow we all ended up in a nightclub at 2 in the morning. I've got to tell you, Hutcho was still bopping, and I remember saying to Alex and great mate, Australian Secretary Jimmy McGivern, I said, my God almighty, he's come back with a vengeance. How are we going to keep up with him? And Hutcho lived life. He lived every single second. And just to reiterate what Senator Moore said, when young Xavier was born, I was here. And Hutcho, nothing was greater to Hutcho than his family. We're going to miss you, Cobber. You know, there's not too many people like Hutcho, and he had a vision or a view. He stuck to it. And you knew if you were in a blue of Hutcho, you had one of the best mates you could have had. He never whipped. He never took a backward step. He was an absolutely passionate supporter and promoter of workers' rights. And it's a shame that there's a lot more, and I'll get in trouble for this, I really don't care because this is about my mate Hutcho. If we could turn out union leaders and union officials and turn them into senators with the values that Hutcho carried, we'd be in a damn great place. So those young ones coming through, don't worry about what you see, some of the batches that are coming through here nowadays. Go back, read some history books, read about Hutcho. Hutcho, rest in peace, mate. We're so glad you're not in pain.
I ask honourable senators to stand in silence to signify their assent to the motion. The motion is carried. We're now going to proceed to the consideration